Hey folks, Bill here, Whirlybird Video Productions, and we're going to start our build on our HobbyKing x666 Quadcopter. This episode is brought to you by HobbyKing. This is the box, nice plain little box. Came in really good condition. I actually got a couple of these, so I'm going to try a couple different configurations just to play around. I'm building these to actually be aerobatic quads. They're not going to be lifting anything, so I don't really plan on lifting cameras with them. I've got the X550 for that, the Quadcopter, to lift stuff with the cameras and things. I'm going to be using a couple components that are new to me, and I'm going to be using several that are ones that I've used to build the Hex and the tricopters with. One of the new ones is this Turnigy speed control. It's a nice looking speed control. It does already have your bullets sorted on the end, and it also has an XT60 power connector sorted on this end, and then has your standard receiver connection on this end, servo to receiver connection. I'll be using the NTM Prop motors, these Prop Drive motors, the 28, 26, 1350. I'll have all this in the description too, so it'll be down there. I'll also be using what we've used in the past, a controller, the LCD KK2 board. And then I'll also be trying out the HobbyKing MEMS controller. This is a new controller, so we're going to try this out and see. This is the full version. This is not the light version. We're going to try that. And then for the props, we're trying HobbyKing's new propellers that you can buy in pairs now. We're going to be doing these. These are 10-inch propellers with a 4.5 pitch. So that so if you see a propeller that's labeled 10 by 4.5, then that means the first number is your inches, so it's a 10-inch propeller. The second number is your pitch, which is 4.5, and if you think about that, in one rotation of the propeller it should move 4.5 inches forward, considering you were in Jello or something. But at any rate, that's what it is. So we are using the 10-inch propellers versus the 9-inch propellers that I used on the Quadcopter to start with. I ended up going to the 10-inch propellers, and it gave me a lot more power. So I'm going to try the 10s first, but I could go back to the 9s since this is not really going to be lifting anything. It could get us some longer flight time with enough power to still do aerobatics. So I'll try them both, let you know which one, but I think I'm probably going to like these 10-inch propellers. So we'll go from there and we'll see. I don't think this build's going to take a lot of time with these new speed controls. They already have the bullets on and the power connection, so I'm going to solder up a small adapter that comes out to the XT60s that goes all together to one big XT60, so all 4 speed controls will go to one power adapter. So that should speed things up, not having to solder all the bullets on and that kind of thing. So let's get started. So once you got your product in and you're ready to start building, go to the HobbyKing website, go to the product, go down at the bottom. There's some tabs down at the bottom that say reviews, discussion, files, so on and so on. Click on files, and then you're going to find a manual for this product. It's generally where the manuals will be, if there is one. And on this one, this x666, there is a color manual. It's in English, and it'll be very, very helpful in putting this thing together. It should be a very quick build. It's very simple. Also, if you got your controller, this particular controller that I'm using is the i86. So I went to the i86 and downloaded the manual for it. So that's going to help us figure out that controller. So we'll start building this thing together, and we're going to do, again, sort sections. We'll start with whatever the first step is. We'll work our way forward. Seems to be the best way. I tend to, you know, when I first get into it, I look at how thick the manual is, and I'm looking back in the back going, oh, that looks confusing. But if you will look back at the start of the manual and work your way to the back, generally it makes sense by the time you get to the part that you're confused on the back here. So you may read ahead some, but really I find in most cases after you've read ahead and made sure you have all your parts in your kit, just start back on step 1 and go forward, unless it's a bad manual. But in this case, the manual looks really simple. It looks like this is going to be a really great build. It should be pretty simple, just like building a Rector set. It's a whole lot easier than building, say, a kit aircraft or even an ARF aircraft. So let's get started. We'll get the camera zoomed in here where you can see a little better, and we'll start the build. So what we're going to do now is install the motor mounts. There's two packages of screws that you get. One package of the screws got little springs in it and fairly large screws. The other one's got fairly small screws as far as big around. That's the screws that we're going to be putting the motor mounts on with, and that part of the frame construction. On your tubes, you'll notice you got two holes that go all the way through on both sides on one end, and then they're fairly large, and then on the other side, small around diameter, there's two that go all the way through this way, one that goes in this way, and then only one side of the hole is drilled here. So this is the actual end that goes out, and that hole goes up, so the motor mount will actually bolt to the bottom like that. So you're going to put your bolts through the top, the nuts will go on the bottom. Now these are nylon locking nuts, so there's really no reason to use Loctite on this, and you probably don't want to with a nylon locking nut because the Loctite is a petroleum based product, and a lot of times that will actually eat certain plastics, and it will most likely just actually cause problems with the lock nut. Spit it out there in a second. I was looking for the hobby knife. Looks like the holes are got a little bit of fiberglass in them there. I like this little Ryobi wrench. It's pretty cool. You can set your strength on how hard you want the clutch to pull. I'm going to set it pretty low and set it up on a high speed. Just run that screw through there real quick. So again, this tube has got the two holes in the bottom, and on the top here, actually this is the bottom, it's got the two holes and then the one extra hole on the end. So the motor mount actually goes in on this direction. Like that. And the bottom gets the lock, again, the nylon locking nut. So when you're tightening that up, you want to get it good and snug, but you don't want to disform the tubing. So just be careful as you're tightening that up. If you bend your tubing, you'll make the actual tube weak. So that's how you do the motor mount. We're going to do that 4 more times. Now that we got all 4 of our arms together, remember you do get an extra, so if you're wondering why you have the extra, this is just for extra parts. So now that we got that, we just move on to the next step. We're going to be assembling the landing gear. This landing gear is made to where that it mounts onto here with just the one screw in the back and allows that to pivot. And then there's a spring that'll hold there. That actually will give us a little bit of shock absorption there for a little hard landings and that kind of thing. The screws to hold these brackets on are actually in the other. I mentioned there was 2 bags of screws, so the screws that hold those on are on in the other bag, or at least these little metal standoffs are. So the metal standoffs are in there, and then the screws are these little small button head here. So the little metal standoff and then the screw that holds that together. Now this is metal to metal here, so we're going to want to Loctite this. Okay, so this takes the 2mm Allen, so I'll go ahead and get this. I'd rather use a screwdriver to do this versus these, versus the electric drill here, just so I can have better tension, make sure I don't strip out this little spacer. Again, on the Loctite, if you guys watched any of my other videos, Loctite's great. I like to use blue Loctite, either the Loctite brand or the Permatex brand. Either one. A little dab will do you, and generally what I'll do is I'll take a piece of plastic or even right out on the table, and I'll put me a little dot of Loctite out on that, and then I can just kind of dip my screw in that as I'm working, and I can leave that little dot of Loctite right there on the table, and I just kind of run my screw through that, just get some on the threads, and then I'll actually take my finger and wipe most of it off so that the excess is off of it, but my threads are covered. I can see plenty of blue Loctite down in that thread. So again, we let the Loctite do the work, so we're going to tighten this up. We're not going to just kill ourselves tightening it up. We're going to snug it up, and that should be plenty. This is a round standoff, but the way it grips that fiberglass, it's going to hold pretty good. So I snugged it up right there. Again, we'll let the Loctite do the work. I don't have to really wrench down on that. So there's two spacers that go in. One the closest hole to the round hole here is where the first spacer goes, and the other spacer goes on the back. Snugged it up just like that. So we're going to have to do this for all our landing gear. We've got, this is a quad, so we got 4 sets of landing gear, so I'm going to do this to 4 pieces. And then I'll take the other 2 and put on top of that one just like this. And you can do this, you know, working all day with your Loctite, because Loctite sets up in the absence of air. So with the air out here, the Loctite's not going to set up. That's why when you buy a bottle of Loctite, it's not all the way full. I'm not going to tighten that screw up just yet till I get the other screw in. That way I don't get the frame in a bind while I'm building. So that's our little landing gear. I'll do this 4 times, and then we'll be back to mount them actually on the leg. Okay, now we've got all of our feet made. We made all 4. So now we have these, we can actually attach our landing gear to the arms. So going back to the M3 by 22 screws that we actually attached the motor mount to the tube with, that's what goes through here. So it says to use a washer on both sides. So we're going to put the washer on the bolt, run it through, put a washer on the other side, and then the nylon locking nut. Again, we're using this nylon locking nut so we don't have to Loctite this bolt. This is a 2.5 millimeter. I don't think I said that a while ago. I want to do this by hand again because I want to be able to feel how tight that's getting. Because this is actually you're going to get it tight, but you want this to move because, again, I was talking about that spring, so that should move pretty freely and for, you know, pretty close to itself if you shake it. That should be tight enough. So we'll put all 4 of these on, and then we will mount the springs to all of them. So I got all my landing gear legs on. So now I'm ready to actually put the springs on. So I've got them, you can see they're loose. Your screw that the best way I've found to do this is find your spring there. Make sure your screw's tight enough to hold it. And then when you're ready, just go ahead and flip that back. Take your spring, let me zoom in so you can see the spring a little better. This is a little bit difficult here. I used to work on laser printers a lot, and some of the bigger laser printers used to use spring guides, so I'm kind of used to working with springs, but still springs can be a pain in the butt every now and then. So the way this works, you want to make sure that the top spring as it goes around can latch around inside of there. So you'll have to take your hook over top of the hole and just kind of shove it and let that pop down in the hole like that. So if I turn that upside down, you can see that hook is hanging in there, and the round point is going around so that it'll latch against and hold. You don't want that going the other way against the tension, or it's liable to slip off on you. So as you got it upside down, you can just slide this right back up, and then these little holes are nice little spots you can actually get right a hold of that spring. Then you can get your needle nose pliers, go up in there and grab the front part of the hook, in other words the part where the gap is, and then you can go right up and over the little spacer like that. They also give you an option if it would be much easier to work with if you, instead of using that spacer, you used a screw. But I would rather just use that spacer. I mean, it's not that difficult to put that on. If you have a really hard crash, that's liable to either bend your spring or pop that loose, but at any rate, I think it'll be fine if you do that right there. And you do a couple mess with it, you'll be able to get them on pretty quick. So I'll show you one more. So again, just flip it back. Take your screw so that, or screw, I keep saying screw. Take your spring so that when you put it down in the top like that, as it goes up, you know that hook is going to be going to the back. And then you can just turn it upside down, raise that up, take your finger, grab the springs through the hole, get your needle nose pliers, grab the front part of the hook where the gap is, pull it towards the bracket, the spacer, and just go right over top of the spacer, just like that. So at this point we're ready to do assembly work on our main frame. This is step number 8. So this is our very top piece. It's a it helps to allow the pivoting of the arms on top of the other top bracket. So to put this together, we're actually going to be using the bigger bolts, and you got to put a washer on it and go straight through both of those pieces. There's washers go on both sides of this, so as you put the arms in and go on the other side, don't forget to put your washer on the other side in between the nut and the frame. Ta-da! So again, I don't have my nylon mounts to where I would be mounting my gear in here. I'm simply going to use the foam. I'm going to put a piece of foam in here. I'll cut this so that it fits down in on the very top of this plate without getting picked up by that secondary piece, and probably just hot glue that on there, and then my controller will go on there just like that. So again, this is your top, so you want to make sure when you put your arms on, your landing gear pointing down. This goes back in the second hole. This is your bottom bracket. Don't forget your washer on this side. I'm not going to really snug that up there very much. I'm just going to kind of get it tight so that my nylon grabs, so that won't come loose while I'm putting the rest of it together. Again, that's really loose. I just don't want the bolt to back out on me. These don't really lock into place. You basically just slide them out and you tighten your screws up so that it's really not going to move, and then you may end up having to tighten and loosen those to get them to fold out for you. So I've got, as you can see, so tight it won't move there. So what you got to do is get it in the lock position and tighten it down, and then you'll see that that won't move. So you have to actually adjust this to do the folding. We've almost got a frame put together here in a very short time. So there we go. See, we got our little spring action there on our legs for shock absorption. So I'm going to fly it in X, so I'll have it where it flies like that. You can see it's a pretty good size quad, 666 millimeters. Actually, I think it says 660 in the manual. It's 666 name, but I guess they wanted to go with that name. But in the manual it says it's 660 from motor shaft center to motor shaft center on opposing arms. So it's a pretty good size. So we got the frame completed now, ready to start putting our motors on, getting everything mounted, all that good stuff. I'm going to fly this again in the X configuration. I'm not sure if I want to put the black arms forwards or back yet. I'm thinking the silver is going to be easier to see, so I may put that up in the front so I can see that. I'm also going to be mounting lights on this thing. So I'm going to put lights on it, and I'm actually trying to figure out whether I want to put LEDs on both sides of the boom or just on the bottom. I'm kind of conflicted on what I'm going to do there, but anyway, I'll come up with some kind of lighting to fly the sucker at night. I think it'll also help with orientation of the day, and I'll wire that all into the one pack, so I only have one battery pack running all that stuff. So thanks for watching the frame construction. Hope that helped anybody that was having trouble. Probably not going to have very many people have trouble because this is very easy to build. This is a really cheap way to get into a quad. It's a really strong frame. This square tubing works absolutely great. A lot of the folks say, well, why not use round tubing like most of the helicopter guys that I fly with? Why not just use tail booms? Tail, you know, that tail back there, we have to pin the tail to keep it from twisting most of the time. So you got to think about your motors out here. If they go to twisting, you're going to have a problem. So a square tube frame to me is the strongest frame you're going to get. The fiberglass in the center is, you know, you could go with carbon fiber. It would no doubt be stronger and lighter, but for the price difference, I mean, this kit's really cheap. I actually bought, like I said, got 2 of them in hopes of building a couple different configurations, and hopefully parts will come in soon, because I had no doubt that I'll be breaking some legs. Probably won't break them, but I'll bend them to get some extra parts really soon. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video where we hook up all the electronics and the motors. It's coming really soon. Thanks a lot.